The morning fog rolled across the beach at Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado, California. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her gear one final time before stepping onto the sand where 37 elite Navy SEALs had gathered for their monthly precision shooting competition. The salty air carried whispers and curious glances as she approached the registration table. "You sure you're in the right place, ma'am?" asked Petty Officer Collins, his voice carrying just enough doubt to make nearby teammates chuckle. Maria had heard variations of this question countless times during her 8 years in the Marine Corps. At 5 feet 4 inches tall, with her hair pulled back in regulation style, she hardly looked like someone who could challenge the best shooters in the Naval Special Forces community. "Pretty sure," Maria replied with a slight smile, signing her name on the competition roster. The laughter around her grew louder when they saw her signature. Several SEALs exchanged knowing looks, the kind that said they were about to witness something entertaining. Commander Jake Morrison, a 20-year SEAL veteran who had organized these monthly competitions for the past 5 years, walked over to review the unexpected addition to his roster. He had seen Maria's name on transfer orders but hadn't expected her to show up to their exclusive shooting event. These competitions were legendary within the special operations community, drawing the most skilled marksmen from various SEAL teams stationed on the West Coast. "Santos, right? You're the new intelligence liaison from Camp Pendleton," Morrison said, studying her with curious eyes. "This competition is pretty intense. We've got guys here who've been shooting professionally for decades. The current range record has stood for 10 years? Maria nodded respectfully. "I understand, sir. I'd still like to participate if that's acceptable." The crowd of SEALs had grown larger, word spreading quickly through their tight-knit community that an outsider wanted to test herself against their best. Whispered conversations filled the air, most assuming this would be a brief and predictable demonstration of why these competitions remained SEAL-only events. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, holder of the current range record, approached with a confident swagger that had earned him respect throughout the teams. His score of 487 out of 500 points had been untouchable for a decade, achieved during a perfect morning when wind conditions were ideal and his focus was absolute. Nobody had come within 15 points of matching it since. "Welcome to our little gathering," Rodriguez said, extending his hand to Maria. "Fair warning, though, we don't typically go easy on newcomers. The course we're running today has broken more than a few egos over the years." Maria shook his hand firmly. "I wouldn't want you to go easy, Chief. That wouldn't prove anything to anyone." The competition format was straightforward but demanding. Shooters would engage targets at distances ranging from 50 yards to 800 yards, using various positions and time constraints that mimicked real combat scenarios. The course included precision shots through narrow windows, moving targets, and wind-reading challenges that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. As the competitors prepared their equipment, Maria quietly assembled her rifle, a custom-built platform that had served her well through multiple deployments. The weapon showed signs of extensive use but had been meticulously maintained. Several SEALs noticed her methodical approach to preparation, the way she checked each component with the practiced efficiency of someone who understood that equipment failure could mean the difference between life and death. "Interesting setup," commented Lieutenant Thompson, genuinely curious about her choice of optics and modifications. "Looks like you've put some serious thought into that build." "It served me well in Afghanistan and Iraq," Maria replied, adjusting her scope settings. "Sometimes the right tool makes all the difference." The first shooter stepped up to the firing line, and the competition began in earnest. Each SEAL performed with the precision expected of their elite status, scores ranging from the low 400s to the mid-460s. The pressure was evident as each man tried to match or exceed Rodriguez's legendary mark, but the morning conditions and the challenging course setup made perfect shooting nearly impossible. When Maria's turn came, the conversations around the range quieted to curious murmurs. She had observed each previous shooter carefully, noting how wind patterns affected bullet trajectory and identifying the most challenging aspects of each shooting position. Her approach was methodical and unhurried, qualities that impressed some of the more experienced competitors. "Take your time up there," called out Petty Officer Williams, genuinely supportive despite his initial skepticism. The targets aren't going anywhere. Maria settled into her first shooting position, a prone stance at the 50-yard line. The crowd expected a respectable but unremarkable performance, perhaps good enough to avoid embarrassment, but nowhere near competitive with their established standards. She controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and began engaging targets with steady, measured shots. The first few rounds found their marks with precision that caught immediate attention. Spotters called out hits in the highest scoring zones, and the casual chatter among spectators began to fade. Maria's shooting rhythm was smooth and consistent. Each shot fired with deliberate timing that suggested extensive training and experience. As she moved through the various shooting positions, from prone to kneeling to standing, her performance remained remarkably steady. The longer distance targets proved challenging for everyone, but Maria's shots continued finding the high-scoring zones with uncanny accuracy. By the halfway point of the course, several SEALs were paying very close attention to her technique. "She's actually pretty good," Rodriguez admitted to Morrison, watching through binoculars as Maria engaged targets at 400 yards. "Her form is textbook perfect, and she's reading the wind better than most of our guys today." Morrison nodded, equally impressed by what he was witnessing. Her file mentioned extensive combat experience, but I wasn't expecting this level of skill. Look at how she's managing her time between shots. The 800-yard targets represented the ultimate test of skill and equipment. These shots required precise calculation of wind drift, bullet drop, and atmospheric conditions. Many exceptional shooters had seen their scores collapse at this final stage, the margin for error too small to allow for anything less than perfection. Maria took extra time studying conditions at the longest range, observing wind indicators and making subtle adjustments to her scope. The SEAL community watched in growing amazement as she delivered shot after shot into the highest scoring zones, her technique remaining flawless even under the pressure of unprecedented scrutiny. When the final shot was fired, the range fell completely silent. Spotters double-checked their calculations while Maria unloaded her rifle and stepped back from the firing line. She had maintained her composure throughout the entire course, showing no signs of the pressure that typically affected competition shooters attempting to achieve exceptional scores. The electronic scoring system displayed preliminary results, but range officials needed to verify several shots that appeared too good to be accurate. Rodriguez found himself hoping for scoring errors that would preserve his decade-old record, while simultaneously admiring the shooting performance he had just witnessed. "Final verification in progress," announced the range officer, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet facility. "All shooters maintain position until official scores are confirmed." Maria cleaned her rifle with the same methodical care she had shown throughout the morning, seemingly unaffected by the tension building around her. She had given her best effort and felt satisfied with her performance, regardless of how it compared to established records. The SEALs waited with anticipation that surprised them. What had begun as casual entertainment had become something far more significant. If the preliminary numbers were accurate, they had just witnessed something that would be discussed in special operations communities for years to come. "Whatever happens," Morrison said quietly to Rodriguez, "that was some of the finest shooting I've ever seen on this range." Rodriguez nodded reluctantly, already beginning to accept that his long-standing record might have met its match. "She earned whatever score she gets, no question about that." The range officer emerged from the scoring booth, carrying a clipboard, his expression unreadable as he approached the gathered competitors. The morning sun had burned off most of the fog, leaving the Coronado Range bathed in clear California light that seemed to intensify the moment's significance. "Gentlemen and lady," he began, glancing at Maria, "we've completed score verification. Today's results include some exceptional shooting across all skill levels." Rodriguez shifted nervously, his confidence wavering for the first time in years. Around him, his teammates waited with unusual tension, all of them having witnessed shooting that defied their expectations. The casual atmosphere that typically marked these competitions had transformed into something approaching ceremony. "Third place goes to Lieutenant Commander Patterson with a score of 471, the range officer announced. Patterson stepped forward with obvious pride, his score representing a personal best that would have been celebrated enthusiastically under normal circumstances. Second place belongs to our defending champion, Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, with a score of 479. The announcement drew surprised murmurs from the crowd. Rodriguez had improved on his typical performance, but still fallen short of his legendary record. Maria maintained her composed expression, though internally she felt the weight of expectation building. She had shot well, perhaps better than ever before, but breaking a 10-year-old record set by elite special forces seemed almost impossible to believe. First place, with a new range record, the officer paused dramatically. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, United States Marine Corps, with a score of 493 out of 500. The silence that followed lasted several heartbeats before erupting into a mixture of applause, amazed laughter, and good-natured disbelief. Rodriguez was the first to approach Maria, extending his hand with genuine respect and admiration. "Outstanding shooting," he said, his voice carrying no trace of bitterness. "I've been waiting 10 years for someone to break that record. I'm honored it was broken by someone who earned it so completely." Commander Morrison stepped forward, equally impressed by both the performance and the sportsmanship being displayed. "Santos, that was remarkable shooting. I'd like to understand how a Marine Corps intelligence specialist developed marksmanship skills that exceed our best operators." Maria accepted the congratulations graciously, still processing what she had accomplished. "Thank you, sir. I've been fortunate to have excellent training opportunities throughout my career." The crowd of SEALs surrounded her, their initial skepticism completely replaced by professional curiosity and respect. Questions came rapidly about her training background, combat experience, and the techniques that had produced such exceptional results. "Where did you learn to read wind like that?" asked Lieutenant Thompson. "Those 800-yard shots were textbook perfect." "I had an outstanding instructor at sniper school," Maria replied. "Gunnery Sergeant Davis taught me that patience and observation matter more than natural talent. He always said that rushing a shot was the fastest way to miss completely." Petty Officer Collins, who had questioned her presence earlier, approached with obvious embarrassment about his initial reaction. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology for my attitude this morning. That was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed." "No apology needed," Maria assured him. "You had no reason to expect anything different. I appreciate being welcomed into your competition." As the formal ceremony concluded, small groups formed around the range as competitors discussed the morning's events. The record-breaking performance had become the primary topic of conversation. But Maria found herself equally interested in learning from the SEAL's techniques and experiences. Rodriguez approached her again, this time carrying a worn leather case. "Santos, I'd like you to have this," he said, opening the case to reveal a custom-made range coin commemorating his decade-old record. "It's been sitting in my office for 10 years. I always figured whoever broke the record would deserve to have it." Maria was genuinely moved by the gesture. "Chief, I can't accept this. That record meant something to you and your teammates." "It did," Rodriguez agreed. "But records exist to be broken by people who earn the right to break them. You more than earned this today." He pressed the case into her hands despite her protests. Commander Morrison had been observing these exchanges with growing interest. An idea was forming that could benefit both the SEAL community and Maria's career development. He approached her as the crowd began to disperse. "Santos, I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. Your performance today suggests abilities that could be valuable to our training programs. Would you be interested in a temporary assignment working with our sniper instructors?" The proposition surprised Maria. She had attended the competition hoping to challenge herself against elite operators, never imagining it might lead to professional opportunities within the SEAL community. "Sir, I'd be honored to contribute however I can, but I'm not sure what I could offer instructors with your level of experience." Morrison smiled. "You'd be surprised. Sometimes fresh perspectives and different training backgrounds can improve established programs. Your shooting today demonstrated skills our people need to learn." The conversation continued as they walked toward the administrative buildings. Morrison explained that the SEAL sniper program was constantly evolving, incorporating new techniques and learning from operators across all military branches. Maria's demonstrated abilities, combined with her intelligence background, could provide valuable insights. "We're planning an advanced marksmanship course for next month," Morrison continued. 20 of our best shooters will participate in 2 weeks of intensive training. I'd like you to serve as an assistant instructor, sharing the techniques that produced today's results. Maria considered the opportunity carefully. Working with SEAL instructors would provide learning experiences unavailable anywhere else in the military. The chance to contribute to training programs that could save lives in combat operations was compelling. I'd need approval from my command, she said thoughtfully. But if that can be arranged, I'd be very interested in participating. Morrison nodded. I'll make the necessary calls. Your commanding officer and I served together several years ago. I don't anticipate any problems getting you temporarily assigned. As they discussed logistics and course details, other competitors continued approaching Maria to discuss her shooting techniques. The initial skepticism had completely disappeared, replaced by genuine professional interest in learning from her methods. Lieutenant Jackson, one of the younger SEALs, was particularly eager to understand her approach to long-distance shooting. What's your secret for staying calm under pressure? Some of us get too excited and rush our shots. Breathing control makes the biggest difference, Maria explained. I learned to treat each shot as an individual event, completely separate from whatever happened before or might happen next. That helps prevent pressure from building up. The discussion attracted several other shooters who gathered around to hear her explain various techniques. Maria found herself conducting an impromptu training session, sharing methods she had learned from various instructors throughout her career. The key is consistent routine, she continued. Every shot should involve exactly the same sequence of actions, from initial position setup through follow-through. When everything becomes automatic, you can focus entirely on the target. Rodriguez listened intently, recognizing techniques that could improve his own shooting. Despite holding the previous record, he understood that learning never stopped for serious marksmen. What about equipment selection? Asked another SEAL. Your rifle setup looked different from most of ours. Maria described her approach to weapon customization, explaining how she had modified her rifle based on specific mission requirements and personal preferences developed through extensive combat experience. The discussion revealed sophisticated understanding of ballistics and equipment optimization. As the afternoon progressed, word of the morning's events spread throughout the naval special warfare community. Phone calls and messages began arriving as news of the broken record reached other SEAL teams and special operations units. Commander Morrison returned from his administrative calls with positive news. Your commanding officer was very supportive of the temporary assignment. He said, and I quote, that anyone who could impress a bunch of SEALs probably had something valuable to teach. Maria laughed at the characterization. Colonel Peterson has always been supportive of professional development opportunities. I'm grateful he's willing to let me participate. The formal arrangements were quickly finalized, with Maria scheduled to begin her instructor assignment the following month. The advanced marksmanship course would bring together some of the most skilled shooters in the SEAL community for intensive training that could significantly impact their operational effectiveness. 4 weeks later, Maria stood before 20 of the Navy's most accomplished snipers in a classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Center. The advanced marksmanship course represented the pinnacle of shooting instruction, bringing together operators with decades of combined combat experience. Her role as assistant instructor still felt surreal, given that she had been an outsider looking in just 1 month earlier. Chief Instructor Wilson, a legendary figure within the sniper community, introduced Maria to the assembled students. Gentlemen, Staff Sergeant Santos recently set a new range record that stood unchallenged for 10 years. More importantly, she did it using techniques that some of you can incorporate into your own shooting programs. The 20 SEALs represented an impressive collection of talent and experience. Several were senior enlisted leaders with multiple combat deployments, while others were rising stars who had demonstrated exceptional marksmanship potential. All had volunteered for the intensive course seeking to refine skills that could mean survival in future operations. Maria began her first instruction period by addressing the psychological aspects of precision shooting, an area where her intelligence background provided unique insights. Pressure management isn't just about controlling your breathing, she explained. It's about managing information flow and maintaining decision-making clarity under stress. The students listened intently as she described techniques for compartmentalizing distractions and maintaining focus during extended shooting sequences. Her approach combined traditional marksmanship fundamentals with cognitive strategies typically associated with intelligence analysis. In combat situations, you're processing multiple information streams simultaneously, Maria continued. Target identification, environmental factors, mission objectives, and threat assessment all compete for mental resources. Learning to prioritize and filter information prevents cognitive overload. Petty Officer Martinez, one of the course participants, raised his hand. How do you maintain that kind of mental discipline when everything around you is chaotic? Practice realistic scenarios, Maria replied. Training should replicate the complexity and pressure of actual missions. If you only practice under perfect conditions, you won't be prepared when conditions are far from perfect. The discussion evolved into detailed examination of training methodologies and scenario development. Maria shared examples from her deployments where environmental factors and mission pressure had created challenging shooting situations that required adaptive thinking. Chief Wilson observed these exchanges with growing appreciation for Maria's instructional abilities. Her combination of technical expertise and practical experience was providing exactly the kind of advanced instruction he hoped to achieve through the course. The afternoon session moved to the range, where Maria demonstrated the shooting techniques that had produced her record-breaking performance. The 20 snipers watched carefully as she explained her approach to each phase of the shooting process, from initial target assessment through final shot execution. Consistency begins with position setup, she said, settling into a prone shooting position. Every aspect of your body position should be identical for every shot. Muscle memory allows you to focus on variables you can't control, like wind and target movement. She fired a series of demonstration shots at various distances, narrating her thought process and decision-making throughout each sequence. The students noted her deliberate pace and methodical approach to each target engagement. Rodriguez, who had volunteered for the course partly to learn from the person who had broken his record, asked about her wind reading techniques. Your wind calls during the competition were remarkably accurate. What indicators do you prioritize? Maria explained her systematic approach to environmental assessment, describing how she combined multiple wind indicators to build a comprehensive picture of atmospheric conditions. Her method was more thorough than most operators typically employed, requiring additional time but producing superior accuracy. Time management becomes critical, she acknowledged. In training, you can afford to be deliberate. In combat, you need to make rapid but informed decisions. The goal is developing judgment that allows accurate wind calls quickly. The demonstration continued with moving target scenarios that replicated operational challenges. Maria's performance remained consistently excellent, but she emphasized the learning process rather than the results. Watch for the mistakes I'm making, she told the group. Even when shots find their targets, technique errors can compound over time. Identifying and correcting small problems prevents major failures later. Lieutenant Commander Stevens, the senior student in the course, appreciated this instructional approach. Most instructors focus on successes. Learning from mistakes is more valuable for long-term improvement. As the week progressed, Maria's integration into the SEAL training program exceeded everyone's expectations. Her technical knowledge impressed experienced instructors, while her teaching ability helped students master advanced concepts quickly. The combination was producing measurable improvements in student performance. Chief Wilson documented these improvements carefully, noting that average scores were increasing significantly compared to previous courses. The students were not only shooting better but understanding the underlying principles that would allow continued development. Santos has brought a fresh perspective to our established curriculum, Wilson reported to Commander Morrison. Her analytical approach to shooting problems is helping our people understand why certain techniques work, not just how to execute them. Morrison was pleased but not surprised by these reports. Maria's record-breaking performance had suggested abilities that extended beyond pure shooting skills. Her success as an instructor confirmed that she could contribute significantly to SEAL training programs. During the course's final week, Maria addressed advanced topics including extreme-range shooting and unconventional shooting positions. These scenarios pushed even experienced snipers to their limits, requiring creative problem-solving and adaptability. Every shooting position you practice expands your operational capabilities, she explained, while demonstrating shots from awkward angles and unstable platforms. Combat rarely provides ideal shooting conditions. Training should prepare you for reality, not textbook situations. The students practiced these challenging scenarios under Maria's guidance, learning to adapt their fundamental techniques to unusual circumstances. Her coaching emphasized problem-solving approaches rather than rigid adherence to standard procedures. The goal isn't perfection under perfect conditions, she reminded them. It's acceptable accuracy under any conditions you might encounter. The final day of the course featured a comprehensive shooting evaluation that tested everything the students had learned. Maria observed each shooter carefully, providing individual coaching that addressed specific weaknesses and reinforced strengths. The results were remarkable. Every student achieved personal best scores, with several approaching the range record Maria had set weeks earlier. More importantly, their techniques demonstrated the solid fundamentals that would support continued improvement. Chief Wilson addressed the graduating class with obvious satisfaction. This has been one of our most successful advanced courses. Your shooting scores reflect significant improvement, but more importantly, you've developed understanding that will serve you throughout your careers. Maria received recognition from both students and instructors for her contributions to the program. Several SEALs requested permission to maintain contact for continued learning opportunities, recognizing her as a valuable professional resource. Rodriguez approached her after the closing ceremony. "Santos, you've given us all something to think about. Your approach to shooting has changed how I understand my own techniques." "That's exactly what good training should do," Maria replied. "Challenge assumptions and provide new perspectives. I've learned as much from all of you as you have from me." Commander Morrison extended an invitation for Maria to return for future training courses, either as an instructor or course developer. The success of her first assignment had demonstrated clear value to the SEAL community. "We'd like to formalize a relationship that allows continued collaboration," Morrison explained. "Your skills and teaching ability could benefit operators across the entire special operations community." Maria considered the opportunity carefully. The experience had been professionally rewarding and personally fulfilling. Working with elite operators had pushed her own skills to new levels while allowing her to contribute to training that could save lives. "I'd be honored to continue contributing however I can," she said. "This has been an incredible learning experience." As Maria prepared to return to her regular duties, she reflected on the month's events. What had begun as a simple desire to test herself against elite competition had evolved into opportunities she could never have anticipated. The SEAL community had welcomed her, not because of her gender or background, but because of demonstrated abilities and professional contributions. The range record would eventually be broken again, but Maria's impact on the sniper training program would continue influencing operators for years to come. Her integration of analytical thinking with traditional marksmanship had created new approaches to instruction that improved both individual performance and overall program effectiveness. The final range session served as both celebration and farewell. Students and instructors gathered to fire ceremonial rounds, marking the conclusion of what many considered the most valuable training they had ever received. "Here's to breaking barriers and setting new standards," Chief Wilson announced, raising his coffee mug in a toast. "And to remembering that excellence comes from dedication and hard work, regardless of where it originates." Maria smiled as she looked around at the faces of men who had become colleagues and friends. The skeptical glances from her first day at the range seemed like distant memories, replaced by respect earned through performance and professionalism. As the California sun set over Coronado Beach, Maria knew this experience had changed her perspective on both her own capabilities and the importance of challenging assumptions. The SEALs had learned from her techniques, but she had learned something equally valuable about the power of determination and the rewards of pushing beyond perceived limitations.